Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. Joining me here from my house is Robbie Rip Rains. He's here in Missouri for the week. He's heading home tomorrow, but we thought we'd manage to get one live in the studio together. Ain't much of a studio. It's just my office. It's pretty cluttered. But Steve Wildman Monrotis is join us. We might have a doc appearance later. We haven't quite heard, but I think we got a pretty good one for you guys tonight. We had an interesting time this week with Robbie in town. Boys, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
How you liking Missouri?
It's good. I like it.
It's humid as hell.
Yeah,
though.
It's been hot.
Y'all hear us okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of a new one. Having to split the microphone between me and Robbie. Just want to make sure you can hear us both.
See, I'm pretty convinced that you brought the weather with you there, Robbie. You know, it was a little bit warm, last week, but you come in and suddenly turns into Satan's nutsack.
Yeah, it was hot and humid as hell when we were in that campground. Oh my god!
Oh my god! You could have kept that crap in South Carolina, my friend.
Yeah, it can be. It can be hot up there too.
You know, I can deal with the humidity and the heat. It was all the bugs. There was a ton of bugs there.
Hey, you're just upset because that mosquito was carrying you away. We got you back. Quit your gripe.
We got mosquito dactyls in Missouri.
Hey, some biggins. I think I got my intake of protein with the first 5 minutes we were on the shore because I inhaled about 10,000 bugs.
I particularly like your reaction when it started raining ticks.
Yeah,
that was a new one.
How many we got in the chat so far? Oh, we're at 85.
Yeah.
That's not too bad for the first couple minutes. And for those of you who are interested in where we were, you guys have heard us talk numerous times about the campground that they bulldozed off on Table Rock Lake. It's called Combs Ferry, and Army Corps of Engineers shut it down and bulldozed it off so you can't get back in there. It is completely overgrown. It is nothing like Joe Bald. Joe Bald, you can still drive back into there, and the roads are clear. Combs Ferry is another world entirely. We hit the ground. It was around 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Me, Robbie, and my son Noah were the first three to hit the ground. And it first thing we noticed when we got off the boat when we came ashore was just how densely overgrown it was. It was way worse than Joe Bald. This obviously had not been maintained in any way, shape, or form in the last 40 years or so. And as soon as the boat left, we started hearing movement in the trees. It wasn't even very far away. So Noah got on the parabolic mic, and he started hearing something walking in the trees around us. I kept trying with my light, trying to get eye shine, but it wasn't close enough, or at least it was averting its eyes. But it wasn't anywhere where we could get eye shine. And it was pretty curious on what the hell we were doing there, the three of us. But all told, 7 of us wound up on the ground there. And I think if it had been a smaller number, we might have had a more aggressive response. But with so many of us there, all armed, it kept its distance. But we did have some pretty interesting encounters.
Yeah. Interesting is a good way to put it.
What was your first feeling when we hit the ground, Robbie?
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, don't go ahead, Robbie. I'll catch up after you.
The first impression when we hit the ground, it was, and a lot of this could have been the heat too, but it was oppressive. There were still ambient sounds, insect sounds and all that, but it was just not like off-putting like it was in Joe Ball the first couple times we've been there, but just kind of like that what are you doing here feeling. Like we'd arouse some kind of curiosity of I think you and I kind of talked about that, Steve. I think that was kind of what you said you felt like too, and I know Noah said he felt the same way, that like it was more territorial.
Yeah, that was my impression. Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts when I got there. The first thing that hit me, now bear in mind, you all know that I'm the skeptic of the group, as I call myself, the cryptid agnostic. If I hadn't already chosen an inebriate Merce, that would probably have been my handle. Uh, when I went out to Joe Bald, um, it, it it looked like a campground that basically the campers had just missed the rapture or had been taken up in the rapture. Let's put it that way. Just like, it was in camping in progress, everybody gone and just kind of frozen in time. The impression I got when we hit Combs Ferry was more like you're visiting the campground after the apocalypse. It was just, it was disorder. It, it was like a campground from like an alternate dimension. It was not someplace I'd want to hang out. And like I said, it was oppressive. You could wear the humidity when we got there. But when we started hearing the noises, the first impression I got, I had gone to the island or the peninsula rather, armed for, coyotes, maybe a mountain lion if we were incredibly unlucky. The predatory sounds that we were hearing, it gave no craps whatsoever that we knew it was there. It wasn't like that silent, careful stalking that you get with like a mountain lion or anything like that. It was just like, I'm here and I don't care that I'm here. And that kind of put me on edge because it didn't seem like natural wildlife behavior as I know from growing up, spending time in the woods.
Yeah,
It just it. Yep, I'm an Eagle Scout. I spent more of my childhood in a tent than I spent in my house. Now I'm not a hunter. My wife jokes all the time that someday I'm going to die petting a critter I shouldn't have pet. But I don't have any fear of, going out and messing with animals. I would probably walk up to a bobcat and be like, "Here, kitty, kitty," until it scratched my face. So I really didn't have that. I didn't have any unease going there. My only thought was if I got picked off and surrounded by a pack of coyotes, I wanted to come out alive. So I packed something I could shoot a couple of coyotes.
We had a few questions I wanted to cover. Well, I think it was Mrs. Moon asked, if we had to sneak in, yes, it is completely shut down, no access to the public. Even the entrances by ground are bulldozed off. So we went in by boat, stealth mode. Wyatt Estes, who's in the chat quite a bit, a good guy. He lives on the other side of Table Rock, and he met us down there with his friend Richard in their boat, and they got us across the lake and into Combs Ferry. In fact, Wyatt went with us. I've got a group photo of everybody, and I've taken a bunch of photos while we were in Combs Ferry. I'll be showing those here shortly. I want to get to a couple of the other questions. Let's see. Prospecting USA hunting. Too bad we couldn't see it. I've got a bunch of pictures for you. We thought about recording video, but there was so much going on around us. We didn't want to take our focus off of it to mess with the video. But the thing about it is there was we would have tried to have gone live over there like we did at Joe Bald. But Joe Bald was kind of a train wreck going live because the signal was so poor, and there was even less signal over at Combs Ferry. So there was no chance we could even try. However, we do have a plan in the works, so we can start doing more of these expeditions live. We've just got to raise the money to get the equipment we need. Old Justin Oldfart says, "Isn't a more aggressive encounter what you wanted?" I wouldn't say it's what we wanted, but it's what we expected. A lot of the stories that take place down around Table Rock Lake indicate that their encounters were fairly aggressive. But the reason is that there was a small number of them. The fact that there were 7 of us, out of that group of 7, there was 4 cops and 4 cops and nurse. My son, who I've taught to use, taught tactics and weapons since he was a kid. So, he was probably as well trained as any of us. In fact, you guys have all met Noah before. So I was confident with Noah. The only unknown quantity was going in with Wyatt, but Wyatt was awesome. I had never gone out in the woods with Wyatt before. So I was wondering how he would react, but he did great. So we had a really good time with it. And I'll put up some pictures here in a minute. So if I missed any more questions.
And I do like the way you divided labor there, DA, while you're looking for your questions. We were kind of a mismatched little group. I think you managed to kind of get everybody briefed really well, get our medical equipment distributed, kind of assign roles. And I think it was kind of refreshing for me, since this is my first expedition, to know what my job is and who my go-tos were for the various things.
And that's
I knew who the cops were. I knew that Robbie was the tracker. He was going to be seeing everything. I knew that Noah was kind of Overwatch. He was catching what anybody else wasn't.
Noah was on the
Um,
Parabolic.
yeah. And so I'm like, I knew that my job was, if something really went to shit and everybody else was able to get us evac, that it was my job to keep them alive until we got to better medical care. And so I just kind of focused on that through the whole thing. It's kind of stupid, but that's where I went.
Well, between the group of us, we had about 5. I think we had 5 Dark Angel med kits, and I distributed those to the people with training. Everybody that's either been to one of Doc's classes, or in Steve's case, he's a nurse. You're a what level are you? Are you an RN?
Yeah, I'm an RN. Yeah, I'm an
Okay.
RN. And then we are required, because of the job I have at the hospital, to do a stop the bleed class. It isn't Doc's class. I will say Doc's class is a whole exponential level better, but I'm trained on how to use a dark kit, something similar to a dark kit.
We did when I was still with the department, we did a full training, first responder level. I can put on tourniquet, stop the bleed, that kind of thing. Jenkins was the same way. So was Lieutenant Estrella, who went with us. Um, oh, okay. Well, everybody, I guess I'll refresh my page too, Noah, but not just the one we're monitoring the chat on YouTube, not the one we're on the live. But yeah, we first thing we did is we sat down with a safety briefing, made sure everybody we distributed the radios, we distributed the med kits, set up the roles on who was doing what, and made sure that if anybody understood, we were on a peninsula, and if they became separated, what they needed to do was stay put till we found them, because it's easy to get turned around in there because it's so severely overgrown. But Steve's right. It did had that almost post-apocalyptic feel to it. It was absolute devastation in there. In Joe Bald, most of the old campsites are still intact. You could sit down at the picnic tables and even pitch a tent if they allowed it. In here, it was devastation. I mean, there were a few of the campsites that were still moderately intact, but most of them are just absolutely been destroyed. And you could look at them and tell it hadn't been done with equipment. There were no hammer marks on any of the broken concrete. There was no sign that they'd used a jackhammer on anything. These were just destroyed. Anything to add, Robbie?
Yeah, like to add with Steve with the post-apocalyptic thing, that's kind of a really good way to describe it. It's almost like you were stepping back in time in a way, but it was also like going forward in time and seeing how something is going to look when humans have not been there for, what did you say, 40 years?
Probably 30, 40 years. I don't remember exactly when they closed that park, but it was well before Joe Bald.
And things always look different at night versus day. But once we started, even once we first got on the shore, there was a little open spot where we went boots on the ground at first, but then once we really started getting into it on that trail, you just felt so closed in on both sides, because the trees were grown up on both sides of the trail. There's spots in there you couldn't even see the lake.
Mhm.
You could see little small lights from houses that were 10, 15, 20 miles away, but you felt like you were cut off. It really felt isolated.
And that was the impression I got as soon as me and Noah hit the ground and the boat backed off. That was when I realized just how tenuous our situation was, because there was no getting back. Not in any hurry. I gave the guy on the boat one of the radios so we could contact him, but the boat was so loud, there's no way he would have heard the radio over. If we'd have been screaming for him to pick us up, he wouldn't have heard it.
Yeah.
He probably might have heard the
you did that.
gunfire, though.
Well, you did that radio check with him. He was 30 feet from the shore, and he was having trouble hearing the radio. And I
Well, that was
remember,
just a channel issue. Once we got the channel
oh,
issue
was it?
straightened out. Yeah, once we got the
Well,
channel
when
straightened out, we could hear each other fine, as long as he was idling.
when we walked from the clearing into that first campsite, I was kind of sticking by Robbie initially because I'm like, okay, he's a cop and he's our kind of our tracker, so he's going to see things first. So maybe it's just my own self-preservation, but I'm like, if shit goes down, Robbie's going to see it before anybody else does. And so I was kind of following you when we walked in that first campground, and I remember saying, what the f happened here? And you just shook your head. You said nothing good. Yeah, that was it. I was like, okay, this is the tone. All right.
Well, I'm going to share the first picture. Let me, oops, not that. Hit the wrong button. Give me a second.
Please hold.
There we go. Now, you can probably see my mouse moving around on the screen. From left to right, that was Lieutenant Estrella. Alfredo Estrella, worked with him at Greene County for years. Great dude. Military veteran as well. He's been deployed multiple times. Here and kind of in the shadow a little bit is Lieutenant Jenkins. There's me. This before I got my beard trimmed. There's Noah. There's Steve, Robbie, and Wyatt Estes. So that was the 7 of us that were on the ground. And, I think all told, I think we had a great solid group for that. Because we filled all the necessary roles. We had of course we had the tracker. So if we got lost, we were going to find our way back. We had Estrella, who, well, not only he is a law enforcement and military, but he kept the GPS pinging constantly. So not only we could find our way back to where the insertion point was, we could make sure we found our way to where we decided we were going to be the extraction point. And Combs Ferry is not small. That is a large peninsula. All told, probably, I don't know if I had to guess, I'd say probably 200 acres.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a good guess.
And we put in near the tip of the peninsula, and then we actually made our way down to the very tip of the peninsula, where we found a area of dried mud, which you've heard Robbie describe as a track trap. So, Robbie, you want to tell a little bit about that? I'll pull up the actual pictures.
Yeah, this is like if you've got water standing in a certain spot and it starts drying up, the mud starts cracking up, and it almost looks like a map. The way you can see how it looks right there.
I've got to pull it up.
Oh, I thought it was already up. Sorry,
I hadn't shared it. Shared it. There we go. I wanted to find the right picture before I brought it up.
Yeah, and you can see water had been in that, I would say, probably within the week. And
as hot as it is, it's not surprising that it cracked like that.
And right there next to Steve's little wallet is, it could very well be a track. It's hard to tell because of the way that track was more than likely was in there when there was water still in it. So as it's dried, you've lost a lot of detail in that, but it definitely, it's still kind of hard to tell from that angle, but I think we got some more angles. There's definitely something there. And to me, it looked like it could be a track.
I don't think all of the photos that we took of this got sent to me. I've only got like 3.
Okay. Did your website get the ones that I sent?
Yes, it did.
Okay, good. I was going to say that little wallet thing, to give you an idea of scale, that little thing is 3 1/4 inches long. It's the size of a credit card. And it's a Ridge wallet, they're advertising all over the internet. So which one to kind of get an idea of just the length of what we were looking at there, to me, it looked like a bare left human foot.
Well, you can still see the outline of it right here.
Yeah, that's a better.
Yeah, well, that's a
there's
different
toes up here and the heel down here.
I guess it's right foot.
And if I had to estimate, I would say it was probably about 17 inches long.
Yeah, I'd say that's a.
I'll go back to the one that's got the credit card in it for scale.
That's
you can see the track here. There's the heel. You can see the impressions of the toes up here, and there's that. So if you took that and duplicated it, it's probably about 5 of those long, maybe a little over. So that's 15 to 17 inches is a pretty good guess. Anyway, go ahead, Robbie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's whatever put that there. It was the water was still there, so it's hard to pull any kind of definition from a track like that, uh, other than just the general shape of it.
And we didn't attempt to cast it because that ground was so dusty and flaky. Anywhere you stepped, it just turned to dust. If we'd have put wet plaster of Paris in there, it just would have turned that area back to mud. There would have been no definition to any kind of casting, so there wasn't any point even trying. But that was the first bit we found. But the whole time, and I don't know if Noah's listening to us and wants to jump in on this, because Noah was on the parabolic mic the entire time. This entire time, he's listening to something breathe very heavily. We can hear it breaking limbs and pacing us on two legs. It was obvious that it was on two legs. I even at one point was listening to one of the earphones with Noah. Unfortunately, we don't have a way to get the parabolic mic recording yet. That's part of the equipment we're wanting to get.
Dr. 455 Sharp's got a question about if that was another impression. Yes, that was another one. It just was a partial. So we focused on the complete print because it photographed a whole lot better. But there was a few more partials in there besides what we showing right there.
Yeah, the one partial looked like it might have been like the front of a foot or even maybe like an animal print. I remember commenting that looked like it might have been a really big dog print. We know there's wolves and coyotes down there.
Mark, I'm going to add a tape measure to my kit. I don't know why I didn't think to bring one.
Well, funny thing is I had one, but I was in the middle of explaining stuff to everybody and Steve just set that down. So I just didn't think about getting it out of there. I had one.
Yeah, Edie, if you figured out a way to record off the parabolic, let me know how, because I would definitely like to. I would love to have had some of the audio. It was at one point we heard snorts and even a partial response to when I did the tongue pop.
And Noah said several times he heard breathing.
Yeah, so a lot of what I heard on the parabolic just ended up being like distant, heavy breaths. I got to the point where I was intentionally listening for everyone else's breaths, just making sure that it wasn't them. And I kind of got the rhythm of whenever anybody in the group was winded, I could tell if it was them breathing or if it was something else. But every once in a while I'd hear something in the distance just kind of being like... But we also had... we had a number of instances where we would hear like limbs snapping, and I don't mean like, someone stepped on like a twig or something like that and it just kind of went crack, like there were a couple of times where we didn't even need the parabolic to hear that stuff. But we also had like on a number of occasions I would be sitting there listening to the parabolic and then I would just like, I was mostly moving with Robbie because me and Robbie were kind of holding up the rear. But I would like pat Robbie and stop him because it'd be like, hey, I just heard something walking. Like it was clearly something on 2 feet and it wasn't any of us.
Well, and even one point, matter of fact, right after we left where that track trap was, Noah told me to get that psionics out, and it doesn't have like a fold out viewfinder where you can see it. So I was trying to look through it and I didn't have my reading glasses on, so I was having trouble seeing through the viewfinder. So I passed it off to Noah. I thought I saw something, but I wasn't trusting my eyes. So he passed the parabolic to me, and I passed the psionics to him. And I'll let you tell it from there, Noah. So
we were at the very end of the peninsula. Like there's a little road that kind of arcs around, and it loops up towards the entrance of the park.
A very broken road.
Yeah, very, very broken road. But we're sitting there, and me and Robbie swap out because I'm like, I'm hearing something moving, and he's like, yeah, I can't really see through this. So if you want to take a look down there and see what you can see, I'm sitting there looking, and while Robbie is actively listening to something moving, I'm sitting there staring down through the psionics, which is pretty much just like FLIR. And I swear to God, like down at the end of the road where we just came from was something just crouched down looking at us, and I was like, Robbie, we need to move. Like, Robbie, we need to get out of here.
one of the things we noticed on the road is not only was the road itself like very cracked and a lot of overgrowth growing up through the broken road. And I can't say that this wasn't the Army Corps of Engineers that did this, but there were like large rocks, like boulder-sized rocks that were probably 500-600 pounds that were placed in the middle of the road, blocking it in multiple places. And then when we got around to one of the areas where one of the campsites had been completely destroyed, we found something. And let me bring up the picture on that and let you guys study that for a minute before I actually tell you what it is. It was a little surprising. Where's it at? I know I got the pictures of it. Is that it? No, that's one of the other track traps.
Yeah, Northwoods said if something looks like it's ready to pounce on you, it's time to relocate quickly. It wasn't close. I will tell you that. It was not close. But
No, it was probably, 35, 40 yards from me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I was going to guesstimate, I'd say about 50, yeah.
Looks like I may not actually have a picture of that.
It less so looked like it was getting ready to pounce on us and more so looked like it was just watching us. Either making sure that we weren't getting too close to it in its own or just seeing what the hell we were doing. You know what I mean?
Now, at that point, you two had kind of fallen back a little bit. The other 5 of us had advanced a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah. This is one of the smashed campsites that we found. This used to be a concrete table and a picnic table and benches that were, concreted to that slab right there. Guess where we found the top of it? And I apparently haven't gotten the picture of that. I know we took pictures, but it's not in my file, so I must.
I think Wyatt might have the picture of it.
Wyatt might have the picture to that one, yeah. Well, I'll check the ones that Wyatt sent me. I'll double check them here real quick in just a second. But the top of this table, the full tabletop, which probably weighed between 12 and 1,500 pounds. It was 6 or 7 feet long by about 4 feet wide and about 6 or 7 inches thick, had been ripped off of it and carried about 20 yards and dropped in the middle of what was left of the road.
And not thrown into the middle of the road. Dropped. Like sat down. Because
double check what I got from Wyatt.
It wasn't like dispersed as if something had thrown it over there. It was everything was cracked but still kind of in place. You know what I mean?
Like it was dropped from a standing position.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, if y'all think this is amazing, just wait.
And
we're not even to the good stuff yet. No, Wyatt didn't have that picture of that. He's the one that sent me the picture we're looking at now.
David Neal asked, how big would you guess the critter was that you guys saw? So here's the thing, is it was definitely like crouched down looking at us. So, I mean, like, I can't really give you a good heading on what the size of it was, but it was pretty big for something that was crouched down. Like,
well, and we don't know the range either. With the FLIR, it doesn't give you a great idea of depth.
So, I mean, crouched down, it was shorter than me, and I'm 6'1". I mean, that's as best as a gauge as I can give you. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, here we go.
Did you find the tabletop picture?
No, I didn't, but I did find an example of how the roads were blocked. This is what we found periodically in the roads. And you can see what's left of the road there. Yeah, the road is a severely overgrown. If it's possible that these were put there by people, but they needed equipment because there's no way that rock weighs less than 500 pounds. These are massive rocks. And let me see if I can find the one of Estrella. There we go. That's one of those rocks. tell you how big those things are. So if those were put there, they had to be put there with heavy equipment, and it's
Yep.
There was no rhyme or reason to where they were placed. And I don't even know why they would need those there anyway, since the entrance to the park itself is bulldozed off. There would be no reason to have for someone to place those.
Most of those were in the middle of the.
Yeah, these were all in the middle of the park. In order to get into the park itself, there was a whole like short wall of boulders and dirt and gravel where they'd bulldozed it up. So there was no way to get a vehicle in there. So there would have been no need for them to go back there and block the road like this.
Well, and that wood that Estrella is standing on, it's not a branch, it's a whole tree.
Yeah.
And the rest of the tree is a good 5 or 10 yards from it. So it's weird. It's like it didn't. At first, we thought maybe it'd been like some weather related tree fall, and it's not. So it was either fell and they drug it or something.
We found several trees that had been clearly pushed down, not broken. Hey, Sentinel's in the house. What's up, dude?
We could have used him on a gun, couldn't we?
No kidding. I'd love to have had Sentinel there. Here's another good one of some of the debris. This is one of the downed trees.
Yeah, no, Robert D. The tree was not cut. To us, it looked like it was shoved over.
This is the one.
Some of the roots
Steve.
were still there.
This is just the top of the tree. You can see where it looks like some of these branches at the top had been cut off, but the actual trunk of the tree was out this direction on the camera, and the roots were still attached and the dirt was pushed up. That tree had been shoved over. I can't say it was the wind, but there were no other down trees beside it. That one was pushed over, roots exposed, and the top of it was in the middle of the trail like that.
There was a question that was asked a moment ago by Roxanne Delgado. She said, could a four-wheeler get over the rocks or the wood?
No, but if you had several fairly stout people, you could probably lift it over it, because the little rock wall was probably only 2.5, 3 feet high. We climbed over it pretty easily, but you would have to have somebody that could lift it over. It's possible that you could have gone like down into the water slightly, or through the trees to get around it. But from what we saw, it was pretty unbroken. However, if the lake was not as high as it was, the Table Rock Lake is really up. It's probably 12 feet to 15 feet above where it's normally at. It would have been fairly easy to go down on the rocky beach and then go around to that wall if the water was lower. But we just beached with the boat and jumped out. And it looked kind of like a cypress swamp. There were all kinds of trees and brush sticking up out of the water. We had to kind of nose in through that, then jump out in shallow water and go ashore.
I mean, with how the rocks were stacked up in the entryway, like if you had a handful of stout, stubborn people, like you could feasibly just clear the rocks out of the way and then ride a ATV or something in there. Like there wasn't a ton of rocks stacked up in the entryway. Like if you had a little bit of time to burn, wanted to burn some calories, and wanted to ride your ATV in there, you feasibly could just move those rocks out of the way.
Mrs. Moon says, "Are the trees mixed, deciduous, and conifers?" There were a lot of cedar trees had the bark peeled off of them to about 15 feet up. And again, we've talked about on the multiple shows how Native Americans have used cedar bark for a lot of medicinal purposes over the centuries. And I spoke to William Nighthawk, and he said, yeah, it's very likely that Bigfoot were doing the same thing in that area, because that's not a deer stripping cedar bark, up to 15 feet up. That would be a massive deer, and there are no elk in that area. But that we found numerous cedar trees that had all the bark stripped off of one side to at least 15 feet up.
We got a super chat from Sentinel here.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it, Sentinel. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Sentinel.
So the next really interesting thing we find,
Steve's favorite part.
Oh, hey, before we get to this, before we get to Steve's part, we're at the bottom of the hour. Jordan, do you want to play the little video from Doc, or do you want me to do it?
You have a better idea of where it's at. I know.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Dot Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And if you go to darkangelmedical.com, don't forget to use discount Cryptid20. That's Cryptid20 for 20% off your entire order. And if you mention Team Odin or the Codename Wild Hunt books, you'll even get a little Team Odin rocker to go on your kit. Best kits in the business, folks. And if you're a first responder of any caliber, of any type, check out Dark Angel, because they are HSA and FSA certified, and you can get your classes and your kits covered. So make sure you check them out and let them know we sent you.
I just want to read off the results of the poll there. I set up a poll that said, would y'all go somewhere secluded like Combs Ferry? And 73% of our chat said, yes, I live for adventure. And 26% of you said, no, I don't like being Bigfoot chow. And I respect that. However,
for the record, I was one of the 26%
so much fun.
votes.
What did you say, Steve?
I was one of the 26% votes. I actually voted. I voted for that. Yeah.
And Steve's been in there, doesn't want to go back. But that's
no.
one of the things we're going to discuss here in a little bit. We want to kind of bounce this idea off all of y'all. If there's interest in it, we'll talk about it here in a minute. But this is all about how we're planning on
Moving
being
forward.
able to remote film and go live while we're doing stuff like this. We've got a plan in place. We just got to get the gear.
Hey, DA, while we were talking, I was digging through, memory hit me. I might have found some gear for us.
What's that?
This is a digital stereo recorder, and it's got various inputs.
Mhm.
This might be able to attach to your parabolic.
That might. How much were those? I might have to get one and try it.
Dude, if it will help, I will donate it to the cause.
Sweet.
I will send you a PDF of the user guide that I just downloaded.
Okay.
The quick guide, and maybe somebody more technically advanced than me, you can look at it.
I'll give
But
it
it's
to
got
Noah.
two built-in microphones. Runs on AA batteries.
I already knew I was about to get voluntold to look at it.
And it's got an SD slot here. There's a little 2 gig card that came with it, but any traditional micro SD will fit it. So anyway, I'll send you the quick guide, let you guys fiddle. It was given to me to record music and stuff, and clearly that never happened. It's been sitting at my desk for like 5 years. But if it'll help.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, man. Thank you. Deloitte Montgomery says, my husband has read DA's new book and loved it. Can't wait to read it, but I wanted to go reread the first 2 Frontier books to refresh my memory. Well, I can't blame you for that. We were just down in Moon Valley. We had gone down there a couple times this week, and Robbie got to see firsthand exactly where I was talking about in those books. But more about that. This is the something I found absolutely intriguing about our little shindig into Combs Ferry. I'm going to bring up this picture, but before I do, I'll kind of give you a little groundwork on it. Then I'm going to let Robbie take over because Robbie's actually the one that found it. I was proceeding down the trail and I had turned my flashlight off. I had a headlamp on. I turned it completely off and was walking very slowly, very heel to toe, trying to minimize noise because I was wanting to see if I could hear something. Because just before that, we kind of got the crap scared out of us. I heard something moving in the woods. It turned out to be an armadillo down by the water. But we did all about jump. I mean, nobody drew on it, but it was one of those oh crap moments, and it turned out to be an armadillo. But that was right up close to us. It wasn't from where we were hearing the sounds. So I walk right past this spot and I hear Robbie go, hey, DA, you might want to come take a look at this. So, Robbie, you want to set this up while I hunt the pictures up?
All right. So, like DA said, most of the group had moved on, and me, Wyatt, and Noah were kind of at the back, and Wyatt and I were talking. So Wyatt was on my left, and I was looking to my left so I could talk to Wyatt, and he was looking at me. And as he moved on, I caught something, not movement, but something caught my eye, and I was like, "Wait a minute, that looks like something hung in a tree." So I said, "Hold up, Wyatt," and I flipped my light on. I said, "Noah, come here." Flip my light on, and that's hanging in the tree.
That is a deer leg and part of the other that has been torn off. And that's
a
tree
front
is
leg,
way
isn't it,
too
Robbie?
small for a mountain lion.
I'm pretty sure it's a front leg.
Yeah, it's definitely a front leg.
And the highest point of that's about 8 feet off the ground.
Yeah, and that tree is, you can't really tell by looking at it, but that tree is only about maybe 6 inches, 7 inches in diameter. There is no way a 150, 170 pound cougar climbed that tree. Those branches aren't thick enough to support anything that heavy.
Yeah, no,
And
the hoof is at my eye level.
Right beneath it was this.
And obviously you could see underneath the leg on the tree, there's still blood on the tree, which that in itself because blood would stay on a tree a lot longer than it would stay on the ground. As hot and as much rain as there's been previously, that was done fairly recently.
Yeah, and the thing about blood, and I can tell you this from going to crime scenes and from going to classes, the thing about blood is it doesn't stay red like this very long. And when it starts drying and getting old, it turns more of a rust brown. This was still very red.
It was at this point that I unintentionally scared the living daylights out of Steve.
Yeah, what was the adjective you used earlier? Intriguing. I would like to edit out your adjective and insert my own. Fucking terrifying. Yeah, he pointed it out to me, and I literally jumped. And I think the first thing that came out of my mouth was something. Let's just say I had a string of expletives until I got composure of myself.
Aimed at me.
And aimed at oh yeah, that's right. I remember. When I kind of calmed down, I'm kind of shaking my head. And Robbie goes, "You okay, Steve?" And I said, "Fuck you, Robbie," and I walked off. No, I was
right
not
about
okay.
That moment that Steve was ready to get on the boat.
And I don't think I told you this, but after that moment, Noah and I kind of stayed at the back pretty much the whole time watching the rear. I looked at Noah. I said, "Noah, if Steve could sprout wings out of his back from sheer force of will right now, he would fly back to the dock."
I would have settled for a jet engine coming up my asshole at that point, honestly. Well, and one part that we failed to mention is when we got off the boat, DA said we kind of had to jump down from the boat a little bit. The beach was kind of covered with cobblestones, and when I jumped down, I twisted my knee a little bit. My right knee's kind of questionable anyway, and I kind of twisted it. And as we're continuing to hike over this uneven terrain, I'm getting in more and more pain, and I'm limping more and more. And it seemed like the activity that we were seeing was getting a little bit more aggressive. And at one point, Robbie pointed out that it seemed like it was trying to draw me away from the rest of the group. And of course, I was flashing back to every, nature film I'd ever seen where, the wounded wildebeest gets picked off by the lion. I'm like, I'm going to be Bigfoot shit. Great. I don't have a whole lot of irrational fears, and I don't scare that easily, but I was barely containing myself. I was batshit terrified, honestly.
Mrs. Moon, I didn't notice any scent.
No,
it had dried out. It had been so hot around here, it dried out pretty fast.
Well, not that you really could have smelled much of anything from the soupy air that was out there as it was.
Yeah, air was thick. Kodiak T-Bone says, "DA, did you guys set any game cameras?" I would have, but these expeditions are pretty much all under my own dime. I can't afford them right now, especially with me going in for heart surgery, on Tuesday. I'd have to finance bubble gum right now, so I don't have any game cameras to set.
Plus, you leave a game cam out there, it's probably going to get taken by conservation
if they find it.
Yeah, we weren't supposed to be out there. It's not open conservation land.
But Robert D says, "Is this a Bigfoot area or Dogman place?" We're pretty sure that across the lake and about 10 miles farther down the lake at Joe Bald, that's probably more Dogman, because that's what Steve and I caught on video down there. It's what I believe we caught. I believe it was Bigfoot at Combs Ferry because it was a very different feel.
Yeah, it just the behaviors alone, like definitely a lot different than what we've experienced at Joe Bald any of the times we've gone.
Well, and it wasn't Patty Bigfoot either. Like this is more, you know, I won't say Gugway, but it was definitely something more aggressive than your typical Patty. It was acutely interested in us.
It was actively monitoring us. And from the sound of things that I was getting on the Parabolic and from the sounds that everyone was noticing that weren't even on the Parabolic, or rather that weren't exclusively on the Parabolic, I guess I should say, it wasn't just one. We were, at a certain point, we were kind of boxed in. But,
yeah, it kind of pulled a pincer maneuver on us.
Well, let me bring this up.
From what we experienced in there, really, I mean, like, it felt more like they were curious as to why we were there, not, actively intending us harm.
Like, we were definitely being watched, and we even had rocks thrown at us a couple of times.
Yeah.
But at any point, I didn't really feel like we were being hunted. Now, however, when we were extracting people by boat, we could only take them out 2 or 3 at a time. And when it was just the 3 of us on the ground as we were leaving, I thought they were getting much closer. Now, this is the actual aerial map of Combs Ferry. We put in right about where that blue dot is. And then we went up. You can see where my mouse is. We went up toward the end of the peninsula, up to this end up here. And then we followed the road back down here, all the way down. And let me switch it over to the other map. No, that's not any better. I thought I had a better map of that. Nope. Anyway, we follow that all the way down here off the bottom of the map, down to about where this corner of the map would be. And that's where the old boat ramp was, where people, when this was when people still could use this as a campground, when it was still an active campground, this is where you could put boats in, and that's where we decided we were going to use as an extraction point, because the boat was not going to have to go back through all the woods and all the trees in the water to be able to get up close to shore.
And it gave us a much more open area.
Yeah, it was much more open. So that's where we decided to pull out. So all told, I bet we probably, and then we were moving at a slow pace, investigating as we went. All told, I bet we walked probably a mile and a half. It's a big park. So what would you say about that? That about right? About a mile and a half?
I'd say about
thereabouts.
Robbie says maybe 2.
Over 2 miles.
But it was a long way, and we were there for hours.
And
we were there. What a good
2 to 3
hours. It sounded like Galil time. Well, we didn't take long guns in with us because we figured that would be very difficult to explain if the conservation agents caught us. So we were all carrying sidearms that we could conceal. But we didn't take long guns because we weren't sure if we were going to get caught while we were in there.
Not to mention that, oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was going to say the thing with the sidearms too. I think Noah and I kind of joked about it. Missouri's a constitutional carry state. If a conservation agent walks up to you and asks you why you're carrying a handgun, I mean, you'd be more polite than this, but realistically, it's because I freaking want to.
Yeah, it's because
it's Missouri.
As I can. Roxanne says, DA, how much eye shine did you see? We saw quite a bit of eye shine, but the best eye shine was actually seen from the boat about 30 yards beyond where we were going to extract from. He kept seeing green eye shine just down from where we were at. Let me see if I got.
Yeah, Richard was getting energized about that. Actually, he's like, if you stand up and looking right at the boat, it's looking right at me, and and of course it's just where we couldn't see it from where we were.
Let me share this real quick. It's kind of tough to see because there was a light fog on the lake, but if you look, this is taken from the boat. He took this picture for us. But where we took out would have been over here somewhere. That would have been but this is just farther down from where the boat ramp was. If you see this little dot right here, and I will zoom in, it'll get much easier to see. That was the picture he managed to snap of something that was peeking around the tree at him.
Right. Yeah, you could hear him on the radio. It's like, it's behind a tree. It's looking at me. It just stood up. It's looking at me.
Yards from you guys. And when we started moving toward it, it took off deeper into the trees. Here's a good one. Here's a good image. So, Steve, I'm sure Steve will appreciate this one.
He was a trooper.
Hey, we made it.
There's the wild man getting a good close-up photo of the deer leg. And this one, you can actually still see the blood on the piece of that.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sitting there cussing under my breath, too. I'm like, what the fuck did I get myself into? Goddamn bastards. Like,
this is
DA's on my list. I'm cussing the whole time I'm taking pictures.
This is clearly torn off. And the amount of blood says that's not like an old kill that something just managed to tear a leg off of. This leg was violently torn off. And from the amount of blood there and below it, I think it was torn off while it was alive.
Well, that is a foreleg, according to Robbie. It's a front leg of the deer, and it was disarticulated at what would be the elbow if it were a human.
Probably grabbed and twisted.
Yeah, there was plenty of spins in the hide.
And
there was
stripped off a bunch of hide with it when it tore the leg off.
Yeah, and there were no tool marks. There was no knife marks. This was like, it was basically alligator death rolled off of the damn thing.
And let's do our due diligence like we've already done, but just so everybody can, we had this conversation that night. What are the main predators of deer in Missouri?
Mm-hmm.
Wolves, coyotes, black bear at times, and cougars. Okay. Obviously, you can go ahead and rule out wolves and coyotes because, like we said, it's 7.5 feet.
Wolves and coyotes don't put meat up a tree.
Yeah, it's 7.5 to 8 feet off the ground. So
right, and it's not their behavior either.
That is definitely not canine behavior at all. You can also rule out the mountain lion because this tree is too small for it to climb, and there were no claw marks on the trees where a big cat had climbed it. This tree was only about the diameter of a softball.
There's also not any large enough trees in the nearby vicinity that it could have dropped that from.
They were all pretty small trees, even in the immediate vicinity. William Nighthawk says, did you consider the possibility that was put there by a bird of prey? And then when I told him, well, clearly it's been ripped off, and above it was a thick canopy. There were still heavy tree branches above us. So, I don't think this was done by an owl or a raptor or a buzzard. This looks like it was placed there deliberately. And what we found later, actually about 30 yards up the trail from this, to me, it just corroborates it. But anyway, Robbie also, was it you that found that one too? Or was it Wyatt?
Me or Wyatt one saw it.
I think Wyatt may have been the one that found this. And this
probably saw it at about the same time. And I think he might have been the one that said something about it.
This was maybe 30 yards from the tree. And again, these are small trees. These are not big enough to support the weight of, I don't even think a raccoon could climb these trees because these are not much more than saplings. And again, this is placed at eye level right along the trail we were walking on.
Yeah, it's a fish head.
Yeah,
that's the front half of a fish.
Yeah.
Wyatt says he thought it was me that saw that one too.
I thought Wyatt was saying that he thought that it was you that put it there.
It wasn't me that found it. I know it was one of the others. Maybe it was Estrella that found it.
No, I think me and Wyatt both found it at the same time, and I think it's probably me that said something. It's all that stuff was.
Well, I think you and Wyatt pointed out to go check out what's in the tree over there, and I remember I was standing right next to Estrella, and he goes, "It's a fish, man." I'm like, "There's a fish in the tree."
That's
and
when
of course,
you said, it's one of those Missouri.
That's not their natural habitat.
I was like, "Oh, that's one of those Missouri flying fish."
And you can see this
You
has
know?
not been cut. This is not smooth edged. It's very rough at the edges. This has not been cut off.
Those damn Missouri tree fish.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's part of another broken campsite.
Mark's got a question. I can't read it from here.
Oh, did you see anywhere where the deer like may have been made? I don't quite.
We didn't find any
I didn't-
more of the body.
And
We
No.
didn't even find any
so-
more blood.
going back to behavior,
Somebody had commented that looks like a deer that's been hit by a car. You have
Yeah, there's
high-speed
no
vehicles.
cars in there. Trust me.
You can't drive on there.
No, there's no
Oh.
way you could have got anything bigger than maybe an ATV in there, and you'd be risking your life heavily to take that thing at anything over idling speed. The ground in there is so broken up. There's so much debris that's in the roads, down trees, large rocks.
and
You'd be
not to
taking your life
mention-
in your own hands, going at any kind of speed.
not
at
to
all.
mention that
Little Patty said the fish committed suicide.
Yeah. Not to mention that in between the area that those were found was in between the big tabletop and that next set of big rocks that we found. So there was no way that an ATV or anything could have got up to enough speed to done anything like that to a deer. Number one. Number two, it's not going to knock it up in the tree. Number three, if it was somebody, why would they get out and hang it up in the tree?
Yeah, and
Well, the
that's
fish head was placed perfectly.
that's another thing that you absolutely could rule out is poachers, because one, poachers being in there hunting deer would be pretty out of place. But for another,
there's a lot easier places in that area to get to hunt.
right? Yeah,
And
but for
other than
another,
the deer part, we didn't see a single deer while we were in there.
it was torn apart. It wasn't gutted. Like, it wasn't done with a knife. That was ripped apart.
Yeah, there was no sharp instruments used on that. What was left? It was like Steve said earlier. It was like an alligator grabbed a hold of it and death rolled it.
And we don't.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have alligators anywhere near?
There have been some seen in Table Rock in the last couple of years, and they say that in the wintertime when part of the lake freezes, if you get out on the ice, you can sometimes see like alligator noses. Where they've gone into hibernation under the
That
water.
was on Lake Taneycomo, not Table Rock.
Was it Taneycomo? Okay,
Mhm.
sorry.
Which is just down the shore from it. I mean, they actually connect. They're separated by a dam. Mark Napier says that was supposed to be. Did you see anywhere where the deer kill may have been made?
I think
No,
it was killed
we
right
did
there.
not.
Yeah,
I
I-
agree with Robbie. I think it was killed right there.
Judging
But
from
the
how
rest
much
of it
fuzz
was
there was
gone.
on the ground, yeah.
And the amount of
Yeah,
blood on
there's
the
a-
ground.
Yeah, I'll bring that picture up again of the blood and everything.
Yeah, there was a considerable amount of blood. If it had been a human that was cut there, they wouldn't have been conscious. To walk away. There was at least 2 units of blood on the ground.
Question here. They asked, do you think the leg and fish were placed there as a warning or just to preserve the meal from other predators or scavengers?
I think they were there as a warning.
Yeah,
I
I
really
think
do.
warning.
I think the consensus of the entire party was that was put there as a warning to us, like, hey, you're getting close to our territory, back off.
Well, they weren't the best parts of the food either. I mean,
Right.
it was the fish head and a bony leg.
Which
There
I don't know if it was
marrow there, but
I don't know if it was just the way the picture was, but the fish looked like it was missing its eye.
It was.
it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
a crow could have pecked the eye out.
Right.
Once it was there.
But if you take a look at this, you can see the quantity of blood on the ground, and some of it's actually quite dark, where blood had pooled. I think that the deer was probably killed right there, and probably killed by having its leg ripped out of socket.
And then probably carried off from there.
Yeah, it was carried
Yeah,
off.
and you
from
could
there.
see all
Although
the
ground
fuzz.
was there's a lot of fuzz that came off the hide, but that ground was so hard packed because of the heat lately that we didn't find any tracks in this area.
And there wasn't any like disturbance to like the smaller trees or the bushes or anything like that looked like it had been dragged off. It definitely, like, if it went anywhere, it was carried off.
I think
Arkansas
Kevin
Hog
Bode
Hunter says, I agree, a warning or a territorial marker saying enter at your own risk. You know, he's got a point, because once we passed the point where those were, that's when it started getting closer.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Hey,
From
DA,
there
did you
till
see
our
Kevin Bode's
extraction
comment?
point, it was getting braver and closer.
Yeah.
the deer sleeps with the
Pull up-
fishes.
Yep, the deer sleeps with the
That's
fishes.
funny. That's hilarious.
I love it.
Made him an offer he can't refuse.
Actually, if you want to get technical about it, the fish was sleeping with the deer
True.
because the deer wasn't in the water. And it was the fish.
The deer and the fish were both sleeping with the hoot owls, because the tree ain't a normal place for a deer either.
No.
Yeah, the good old Missouri tree deer.
Yeah.
Just
I
walking
like
through the
Missouri
woods, and then
tree
suddenly
trout.
a deer falls on you. You're like, holy crap!
Randall Brada
Well-
says a cougar put that deer in a tree. You know, we considered that, but again, that tree was too small to support a big cat. It was only about the diameter of a softball. There were no claw marks on that tree, and all of the branches of that tree were probably no bigger around than a quarter. They were not big branches. They could not have supported a big cat.
And usually, if a cougar makes a kill, it takes it up a tree, which it does. It doesn't take it up the tree that it makes a kill at, because that right there is a sign for another predator to come around. So it's going to make the kill, and it's going to go on down the road and take it up the tree there so it can eat in peace. It's not going to take it up the tree right where it made the kill. That's going to draw other predators too.
And, you know, a cougar kills by grabbing the throat and suffocating, or grabbing the nose and suffocating. It doesn't kill by tearing a leg off.
Yeah. A tree bass.
Again, with
So
the
yes, we did consider the possibility of being a cougar.
Yeah,
but I really don't think it could be.
Here's the thing, and Noah can attest to this, and so can Steve, because they sat there and watched me. I walked all the way around that tree, looked that tree up and down. There was no sign of anything that had climbed that tree. Because I looked right at Noah when we found out, and I said, first thing people are going to think is a cougar put this in a tree, didn't I, Noah?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I walked all the way around that tree, looking and seeing if there was any sign that anything had climbed that tree. And if it was a young cougar, maybe, but it would still make marks where it climbed up the tree. There was nothing. It was just like somebody or something had went, and it was 7.5 to 8 feet off the ground. So,
One
in
of
my
the things
opinion, it
we've
was
got to get
deliberately
better
hung
about
there.
is taking more pictures. I was so focused on looking around and listening to what was going on around us, I didn't hardly take any pictures myself. That's something we need to focus on. We need to just designate one person to photograph the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
And that's my oversight. When I was divvying out roles, I didn't select a cameraman. Next time we will do that. We've got a bunch of pictures, but I would like to have like 5 times the amount of this, because some of the stuff that we saw didn't get photographed, and that is entirely my fault.
Well, I think, speaking for myself, I didn't really know what I was getting into, and it definitely was more exciting than I expected. So I myself was pretty distracted. My pictures trailed off too.
The fish was so upset that it committed murder that it decided to kill itself so it didn't have to go to jail.
That's funny.
Those damn psychopath fish.
Well, and it didn't help that right after we saw these things in the tree, I think it was Estrella said, these things do travel in the trees. And
Yeah.
so like the rest of the time, I'm looking with my head up, waiting for something to drop on me.
Noah Pinderell says something with hands had to have placed that fish there. It seems. I would agree, because it was placed in there right at head level, and it was stuck down in the crook of a branch. And it doesn't make sense for anything else to have done that. And you can tell when birds have gotten at something, because the wound is going to be ragged. Now, while the edges of that were ragged, it was way smoother than you would see if birds were taking chunks out, because birds don't bite the same spot. They'll just bite where they can pull stuff off. So if that thing had just been completely scavenged by a bird, there would be more signs. Plus, birds don't eat the bones.
Rodney's got a good question too.
What do we got? Okay. RDG Info World. He says, with more and more cryptid sightings all over, do y'all think it might be a serious concern for the safety of people? Yeah, I think it needs to be addressed. The government is slowly admitting more and more that these things are out there. And we have no idea how many people go missing each year because of these things. According to NAM US, 600,000 people a year go missing. Now, I'm not saying 600,000 people are taken by Sasquatch. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. And RDG here, he was Robbie's old chief. He was a cop. Robbie was a cop. I was a cop. Steve was a cop for a while. Noah's grown up around cops. We can all tell you that 9 times out of 10, when somebody gets reported missing, they'll stumble in a day or two, or you find a body. Usually when somebody is reported missing, it gets resolved one way or the other. It's those rare cases where someone vanishes without a trace. And, granted, some of those cases are undoubtedly human trafficking. However, when you've got a car parked near a reservoir, still running with the door open and no sign of the person, or you find a tent out in the middle of the woods that has been ripped open and there's no sign of the person, but all their gear is still there. Those kind of missing person cases are the ones that I tend to think are probably more cryptid related.
Mm-hmm. Well, and another thing to bear in mind too, because there are several ways this could all have gone down. Bear in mind, I am not a believer in this. I am the agnostic. And I'll be honest, I left with more questions than answers. I really do. I would potentially be willing to go back there like in the daylight with a good group of people, but you're not catching me going out there at night again, ever. It's just not going to happen.
Hog Hunter Dan, he says, in my own opinion, I'd say it was a booger or possibly a dogman. Like we used to feed our dogs fish and then never eat the heads. They would often leave them at the edge of the area. But I would, just simply because of the way the area felt, I think we were definitely dealing with Bigfoot in that area because it was a totally different feeling than Joe Bald at night. Joe Bald has a predatory feeling. However, when we were down there at Joe Bald the other night, there were a bunch of people there, and Joe Bald just felt normal. It just felt like a night in the woods. When we were broadcasting live from there, I never once got the heebie-jeebies while we were out there. The whole place just felt different. And to me, that kind of lends credence to our theory that these things have a very large range. Fall of the year when Steve and I had our encounter. Fall of the year when Robbie and I and Noah had our encounter down there. So I'm thinking if we're going to have anything at Joe Bald, it's going to be in the cooler months, probably September through December. And that's when I'm planning to set up at Joe Bald again. Hopefully, we'll have the equipment that we want to go live from Joe Bald once the weather breaks. And, we got to get back to Joe Bald here in a little bit. We're going to continue talking about Combs Ferry, but Combs Ferry wasn't the only place Robbie and I and Noah went this week. We also hit Joe Bald. We also went out to Smittle Cave. Went out there twice. Went out to Moon Valley twice. We've hit some pretty
Bennett Springs. Bennett Springs is right there by.
Yeah, but Bennett Springs is there's so many people there.
There have been sightings there though. So
there have been sightings at Bennett Springs. But we're going to talk about those here in a minute. But Combs Ferry was definitely not the only place we hit this week. Jake Light says top of the hour. Robbie, you want to talk a little bit about Scallywag Tactical?
Sure.
Speaking of Scallywag, they were heavily represented at dinner where we were out.
That they were.
Scallywag Tactical is another one of our veteran-owned affiliates. They make some of the best blades that you can have. This is the Gunner's Mate. DA is about to hold up the Wahoo, which is a new one that we've all got. Steve's got one. I got one.
Yep.
Noah's got. That's not a Wahoo.
I don't have a Wahoo.
Was that the Transformer?
Nope. Here's my privateer.
Yep, the privateer. Look, guys, if you like blades and you like good, dependable blades, go check out Scallywag Tactical. Use code DA Roberts 10 at checkout. Get yourself 10% off on any of your purchases. Check out the blemish blades. It says blemish, but they're usually 99.9% of the time there's nothing wrong with them. And you can't find. I think DA's got one knife that he found one small little scratch on, and
where the box is crushed.
Yeah, it doesn't affect the performance of the blade. They've also just partnered up or bought out Gray's Tactical. Was it partnered up? Sort of, kind of, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Gray's Customs.
Gray's Customs, I'm sorry. And so that's two really good companies together now. So they've got a lot of good new stuff coming out. Go check them out. Tell them we sent you. That's all I got to say about that.
So back to Combs Ferry.
Real quick, I do want to fall back on a question we almost missed.
Okay.
This one was directed at Steve. Steve, what would you do if you were to see a Bigfoot or a Dogman?
Honestly, to put myself in the mind space of that night, had I seen it, assuming it was far enough away that I didn't feel like immediately terrified, I would do my best to get some photographic evidence of it. Because like one of my biggest gripes, and I say this probably because I have the bias I've never had an actual encounter, was that everybody's got a high definition camera in their damn pocket and nobody gets a picture of this shit. I would, and I had my camera out the whole time, so I'm like, I would get some kind of picture of it, and I would do my best to quietly move away from it. I've encountered, stumbled upon badgers before. I've stumbled across black bears. I make it a point to not make myself look like a prey item. You see a mountain lion, you make yourself look big, and you back away. I would try to do that. Now, if it charged me, I would be moving as fast as my fat ass would take me, because the 9mm pistol wouldn't do me any good at all. It would, help its intake of lead, I suppose, but I don't think it would drop something that big. I definitely wouldn't want to stick around, but it would be important to me to get evidence of it. At heart, I'm a scientist. I want to believe in this stuff, but I want to see some more proof than just, some pareidolia with some red circles drawn around it. I want something. I don't have the faith in the community that I should have.
Noah, you know what I'm thinking, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't what you said the other night.
Last night? No, by the time by the time that boat got there, I want to be the first on that damn boat. No, I was doing okay until the point when Robbie pointed out that I was probably being picked off at that point. I'm like, oh, hell no. I ain't going down like this.
Steve looked at me and Noah, and he said, I know I've said I want to see a body. I want to see this. He said, but fuck that. I'm ready to get out of here. I believe. Let's go. Let's get out of here. I'm good.
He said, I am good to go.
I am good to go.
He said, I've seen all I need to.
I saw, like I said, I left with more questions than answers. I saw enough that I couldn't explain that I'm willing to say I believe in cryptids. I still would like to have more concrete evidence of the actual creature instead of its effects, but I prefer to see it from the comfort of somebody else's camera. And I honestly thought it would be an opportunity to go run around the woods with some of my friends and maybe, spook up a coyote or two. I like the woods. I really didn't think we would seriously encounter anything, or, like when we were at Joe Bald, I felt perfectly safe. I went and pissed on a tree, for God's sake. I felt perfectly safe knowing that it was a cryptid hotspot. I did not feel safe there, and I did not feel safe pretty early on. And there were more of us. When we were at Joe Bald, it was me, DA, and our two wives. And my wife was busy, looking for a place where she could potentially catfish in the future. And I think your wife was just kind of tolerating us at that moment.
Yeah, pretty much.
We weren't actively trying
we were down
to
there for
encounter
cryptids anyway. We were just shooting a book promo.
So I want to point out a question that actually is a really good poll question.
Well,
so Kodiak, thank you for the suggestion here, chat. I'm gonna actually open this up for everybody. Which do y'all think is scarier, Bigfoot or Dogman?
Dogman, hands down.
Dogman, hands down for me as well. Yes. Dad, you had another question up, and I.
Yeah, well, Mark said that would have been a great place to have a drone with a thermal camera.
Yeah.
Yes and no. That would have taken somebody on the boat to fly that over us, because the tree canopy and the shrubs in there were so freaking thick. I wouldn't have wanted to try to pilot one from the ground.
No.
That is something somebody on the boat would have had to set offshore and flown it around above us and watched us and then brought it back to the boat. There was no way we could have safely landed a drone in that foliage.
There
There's
were
another
places we were passing single file.
There's another question we almost missed. Born Not to Run asked, how was Smittle Cave?
Smittle Cave was interesting. We went down there the first time, and there were multiple game wardens down there. That was the first thing we noticed, that they were all over the area. There was one guy camping there's a little area down from the cave where there's a couple of concrete picnic tables. Well, there was a guy camping there, and I considered stopping to talk to the guy, but he looked like your garden variety Mexican American, so I didn't really want to strike up a conversation with a guy I might wind up shooting later. So we avoided him, but we went all the way up the road, the access road to where the cave was at, and there was conservation up there too. So we left the area and said, hey, we're going to come back after dark and see if we can get back in here. But when we came back down, the gate was locked. We couldn't get in there. So we were 0 for 2 going into Smittle. However, just down from the cave is a low water stream, and we stopped there, and I tried the tongue pops, and Robbie was checking for tracks, but the area was so much gravel, so much river rock. It was not a great area for tracks, so we didn't really find much of anything. Robbie, you can let's tell a little bit about what you found.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of little sandbars out in the middle that maybe had some good spots, but obviously we didn't have the equipment to get out there to that at that particular point. The whole area felt like it was a really good area to have some of that. And we actually, when we went back there that night, is when I think was when we had the shofar, and that we had two different sets of people camping, and we were like, probably not a good idea to come down here and start blowing this, because if we do tick something off,
there were people there.
Yeah, there were people there, and we blow something, we don't hear anything, we leave, and then we've ticked something off, and it comes out and
didn't want to be responsible for getting
messes with them. So
or a missing 411. But we will talk about where we played the shofar. Mark Napier said, is there any cryptid activity in the Pomme de Terre State Park Lake area? Yeah, up near Stockton Lake and Pomme de Terre Lake, there's quite a bit of cryptid activity reported up there, mostly Bigfoot. I don't think I've heard any Dogman encounters from up there, but I've certainly heard a number of Bigfoot stories. Kevin Bode sounds like a winter project. Yeah, I would like to get back in there when there's not as much foliage and there's not literally clouds of swarming insects. I would like to go back in there when the leaves have dropped. Although that poses an entirely different set of problems, because without all the foliage, if there are game wardens or conservation in the area, they're going to see us moving. John Lamb says, if these creatures are capable of draining camera and recorder batteries, it would be more than likely be able to jam a drone. We did have trouble. Something kept interfering with the parabolic mic,
particularly at the end.
As we were waiting for the boat to pull us out.
It would just suddenly just start just ringing out. I couldn't hear anything. Just loud static going through the mic, and I'd sit there and play with the settings and adjust the headphones, and you just continue.
That's Lieutenant Jenkins. He was on the ground with us. He said, I did enjoy the experience and want to go again. My list of things to bring will be better. Yeah, I definitely want to take you guys with us again, LT. You guys were great assets to the group. Next time I want to go in, and I would like to stay longer. I know we were only there for, about 3 hours.
You hear that, Steve?
Hey, if it's with a group of you guys, fine, count me in. I was just picturing I got my knee braced at that point.
And had another good comment.
I'm still paying for it. I'm hurting pretty good still. Yeah.
Noah Penderell says, did you see any sapling tree snaps or structures made with broken branches? Seems to be a common thing with Bigfoot hotspots. I didn't notice anything that you could consider a tree structure, but the undergrowth there was incredibly thick, and there were downed limbs everywhere. So I can't say anything in particular was a tree structure. But again, I want to go back in there in the daylight so we can see a little better. I think we might be able to find some tree structures at that point, but there was so much down foliage in that area. It was impossible with the amount of light we had. It was impossible to tell one way or the other what it was.
Another thing that the weirdest thing, I guess I should say, that I heard on the Parabolic, and I actually brought this up with Robbie and Dad, and Steve, you may have heard this as well. But while I was on the Parabolic, while we were actually heading towards the exit area, I like am almost 100% certain what I heard pointing it out towards the exit was radio chatter. And I don't mean like, oh, this is 95.5, you know, like that's not, I mean, like I heard like someone talking
Like
out of a
law enforcement
walkie-talkie.
radio or something.
Yeah.
But
And-
you know, then again, one thing we can say for sure, and we've all noticed this, is sound tends to travel over water. So it could have been, you know, somebody CB on a boat. It could have been somebody with a walkie-talkie across the peninsula. Yeah, but
it was
clearly
weird.
wasn't anybody there in the park with us.
That is very weird.
Because there was no other signs of people in there. That place had not seen people in a good long while. There was some garbage, like, you know, we saw a couple of beer cans and some bottle caps, but they were all old. I don't think there had been any human activity in that area for probably years.
Well, one of the beer cans that I saw, the print was even like faded off of the can.
Mhm.
It was
Like
like
sun
a bare
bleached.
aluminum can with like it was like a bare aluminum can with like a shadow of, you know, a bush emblem or whatever the hell the brewer was on it. You know,
Gilbert
It
Miller
was-
says,
it was
I came
weird.
in late. Why is Combs Ferry closed? We don't know. It was an active park with a marina, and the Army Corps of Engineers shut it down. They've shut down a number of other campgrounds, both on Lake of the Ozarks, on Table Rock Lake, and that we know of on Stockton Lake. So we know of other campgrounds that have been shut down without explanation. When Steve and I first started investigating Joe Bald, we found that there was either 8 or 9 disappearances associated with the park. And then when I went back a few days later to try to find those articles to print them all, they were gone. But there's nothing on why they closed Combs Ferry. I've even talked to people that live in the area and they don't know.
yeah,
Or
and
maybe
it
this could have been a park
both
ranger or a cop parked doing paperwork. That's entirely possible.
and both of those campgrounds were pretty active campgrounds. You know, they were fairly popular places to hang out. You know, Table Rock's a beautiful lake. It's got some good fishing. You know, when we were waiting on the dock for the later groups to get back on shore, I mean, there was a guy fishing off of one of the boat ramps, and the fish that were coming by the dock, I could have reached in the water and grabbed one. You know, they were
Yes,
that close.
really good fishing on Table Rock.
Earlier comment here, Stefan Snyder said, I'm sure Noah would have been happier without the bugs when he had the camera at Joe Bald. The bugs at Joe Bald were so much thicker than they were at Combs Ferry.
I can't
It
tell you
was
how many freaking bugs
crazy.
I swallowed just breathing at
Yeah,
Joe Bald.
it was awful. And I mean, all three of us at one point or another got attacked by the same flying roach, but it really took a liking to me.
That's funny. Well, at the first thing we did when we got on shore at Combs Ferry was I had that can of Deep Woods off, and we used it completely up on everybody. We're like, cover your eyes and start turning around. You're getting hosed. I mean, I sprayed it in my hair. I mean, it was everywhere because I wasn't going to be food for something.
But when we made it to the exfil area, the boat ramp where we were planning to be picked up at, again, the boat could only come in. It was a small bass boat. It wasn't designed. If we'd had a pontoon boat, we'd have just gone in as a group and left as a group. But since it was a small boat, he had to ferry us back and forth across the lake. So he's only taking a couple at a time. Again, there were 7 of us. Steve and Lieutenant Jenkins went out on the first boat. Then the second boat was Wyatt and Estrella, and me and Noah and Robbie were the last 3 out. Once it was just the 3 of us on the ground, whatever was in the tree line that had been following us was getting closer. I don't know if it was getting braver because there was less of us, or if its curiosity was getting the better of it. But when it was just the three of us on the ground, they got close. Not close enough to see, unfortunately.
No.
Roxanne says, Noah, cover yourself with Skin So Soft. I use that every time I go in the woods. The bugs leave you alone. I found a product I'm wanting to try. Yeah, I found it on Amazon. It's a citronella soap. It's an all natural citronella soap with citronella oil in the soap, and you shower with it before you go out in the woods. And it had a very high reviews. And people said bugs and ticks stayed away from them. So I want to try that. Because I really don't like having chemicals all over me, but having natural citronella oil, using it as a soap, I think would be just fine. So once we got out of Combs Ferry and made it back out to the docks, and everybody split up and went their separate ways, Wyatt texted me because where they put the boat in was not where we dropped off at. They went back to another area, and we're getting ready to take the boat out of the water. And I wish we had Wyatt on here. I should have thought of that. Should have thought of having Wyatt come join us in the group here. But Wyatt sent me some pictures, and these were right next to where they took the boat out. And I'm going to bring these up and show them to you. There is a wallet in the photos for scale. And this was near their truck and trailer where they put the boat in. You notice right there next to it. Robbie's seeing these for the first time. I've been kind of saving them to surprise him. But you can still see definition of toes. You can see the heel. And that wallet's 6 inches.
And that's
better part of an 18-inch track.
Yeah, I was about to say you could probably fit 3 wallets beside that then. 3 times 6.
And that's not the only ones he got. That's him holding it up next to one of the partials. There's
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's the same track that had the wallet laying next to it, just without the wallet there.
That's unmistakable.
Yeah.
We could have if we had some saran wrap, we could have probably cast that.
Yeah. Wyatt sent me these pictures once we were already on our way back to Springfield. If we'd have been there with the casting material, I probably would have cast this, because that's a fantastic track, and it's in small gravel. So if we had covered that with some light saran wrap, we could have cast that very easily. There's one of the partials. There's a partial.
Yeah.
See that one?
Yeah. I would have definitely cast that first one.
Yeah. Oh, that's the end of them. But those were all found where they had the boat parked at another little public access area where they had put the boat in and left the truck parked. Chris Burkhart says, depending on the atmospheric deals, you can pick up skip across the world. We were training at Camp Ripley, Minnesota, and picked up skip from Afghanistan. I don't think this was skip that he was picking up, because he picked it up on a parabolic mic. If we'd have picked it up on a radio, yeah, it could have been broadcast from just about anywhere. But since he was hearing it, it was coming from a speaker somewhere.
Yeah, the parabolic microphone doesn't have a receiver. It's just amplifying the ambient sound. Well, it's definitely an interesting night. I would have liked to have gone to the other one the next night, but I couldn't frickin' walk by that point.
This picture I took down near Smittle Cave. I'm going to share this one. Again, this was not that same night. This was
Monday.
Yeah, this was the day of, but this was the same day we went down to Combs Ferry, but it was much earlier in the day. And this one is one that kind of perplexed me. If you take a look at this, you notice how we've got this across here and it lets water through, and you've got water standing back there. I almost think this is a fish trap. like Native Americans used to build. I sent the picture to William Nighthawk, and he wasn't entirely sure. He said that usually when his people built traps, they used rocks out in the water, but he said this could just be a natural formation. But to me, it just, the simple fact that there's so much water trapped behind it, it'd be so easy to trap fish back in that. To me, it just stuck out, and that's why I took pictures of it.
Could it have been a beaver dam?
No, because it wasn't in the main part of the creek. It was like an offshoot.
Oh,
It led off into the trees, not as part of the creek.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah, it kind of like tunneled off, like it was like a bit of a clearing.
Yeah, it went off from the creek at about a 90-degree angle. Mark Napier says, do you believe it's Bigfoot or Dogman activity? I think it's Bigfoot activity in Combs Ferry. I really do.
I think that was the general consensus as well. I think we were all feeling like it was more akin to a Bigfoot than a Dogman.
Yeah.
Because whereas our experiences with what we presume to be a Dogman in other instances, it's felt more predatory. What was in Combs Ferry felt more observant or territorial even.
I think territorial is where the feeling I got. Now, I don't know if it's just my own fear, but I definitely felt more preyed upon towards the end, and it could have been because I was self-conscious of the fact that I was hurt. I don't know, but I definitely was a lot more uneasy later on.
I think towards the end, it was starting to get a lot more bold.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are at the bottom of the hour. Let's take a moment to talk about our other sponsor. If he's still in chat, he can chime in. But it's Ken, the Tactical Midget, Ken Brock. Ken's a longtime friend of the show, longtime friend of ours. He's a retired law enforcement officer. He now makes custom blades in the shop behind his house. Definitely check out brockblades.com. They have fantastic blades. I've got one. I'm planning on getting more. But he not only does not only are the blades available that he has on his website, you can also order custom blades. And if you've got a friend or a family member who's ex military, a veteran or still active, or a first responder, or even just an outdoorsman, the gift of a custom blade is something that will be treasured. And these aren't meant to just sit on a shelf and look pretty. These are very functional, very sharp, very high quality blades. So check out brockblades.com. And don't forget to use discount code CRYPTID10. That's CRYPTID10 for 10% off your entire order. And if you do order a custom, make sure you tell him you heard about it from here on Ex Machina, and he'll make sure that you get your 10% off on even your custom orders. So check him out and tell him we sent you.
He said he's actually put a lot of stuff on the website last week. So
yeah, he said he just added more to the website. So definitely go check it out. He's got some fantastic blades.
Ken, I just got my first tactical backpack in the other day, and I got molly tabs on it, so I can actually strap you to me if you want to go on our next one. We'll take you with and pack you in.
Well, I was going to try to play some of the videos that I recorded while in Smittle Cave, but this is telling me they're in the wrong format. Let me see if I can. I can play them, but you won't get any of the audio. So let me share the screen. And this is the first of them. That's Robbie's noggin in the foreground. I was talking about a horsefly.
Hey man, who's being a little asshole? Of course I'm going to talk about it.
And what
wouldn't leave me alone.
What you can't hear on the audio is while Noah's filming this, I'm doing the tongue pop, and you can hear it echoing down the valley. But we never did get a response there.
Do you think that the critters we were dealing with were getting closer because of your tongue pops?
Maybe.
Because
That's entirely
they
possible.
definitely were. We heard more. I mean, they never responded like with their own pops,
Well, they
but they
did,
definitely
but
seemed
not
like they
loud
were
enough that
closer
we
after
could
you did
hear it.
that.
No one could hear the responses on the.
Yeah, I only a couple of times did I hear a response, but
And this is a really good example of just how thick the woods are down there by Smittle Cave. Unfortunately, we were not able to get to the cave itself because of the conservation, but we're also planning another outing. And if we've got the equipment, we'll do a live from down there. And that's the gravel bar right next to that creek. And periodically during this video, you can hear me popping my tongue. We're gonna piece together these videos and edit them together, and we'll put these videos up in their entirety on the YouTube channel. So if you're a member of the YouTube channel, those will be in the members only videos. But check those out, and we'll probably also place them on the Patreon as well once we get these edited, so you can see those videos in their entirety. And be able to check out the whole thing for yourselves. But we'll hopefully have those up in the next week or so. Missouri Broad, you're correct. It is a very beautiful place, and I would have been very upset if my family got it taken away from us. Mark says, "Do you see any tracks coming out of the Smittle Cave area?" We didn't actually get to the cave itself because of the conservation agents. And when we got back, there's a big steel gate that goes across that prevents you from even getting up close to it. So we weren't actually able to get to the cave itself. That is something that we're planning on doing, in the near future. But the hope is that we can get the equipment we want to get, so we can do a live broadcast from there. And I do believe that area around Smittle Cave, that area around the Smittle Cave has had quite a few Bigfoot sightings. In fact, there's a website, and I can't remember what it's called. Let me check my messages because I've got it saved. Give me just a second. It's called mapsquatch.com. MAPSQUATCH. Mapsquatch.com. And it's got a lot of sighting reports listed on the map, and you can click on the little spots on the map. It's got UFO sightings, it's got Bigfoot sightings, and it's also got areas of like historical significance marked. It's a great little mapping tool. And
you could even use it to avoid certain areas.
Right. And it shows a couple of Bigfoot sightings within just a couple of miles of there. Born Not to Run says, is it not a part or open to the public area? It's part of a nature preserve. There's a wildlife management area in there, and it's something we've talked about on the show. It's odd how many times those wildlife management areas have a prodigious amount of sightings, and there aren't many houses out there. Robbie, Noah, and both can tell you, we didn't pass very many houses going out there, and it's all
there's like a handful on the actual proper road for it, but then once you start getting closer, there's like maybe one.
Yeah, it's all owned by the Missouri Department of Conservation. And they can control access to it. So, we're going to have to get in there at a time of year where we're not afraid to park and hike back into the woods. This year, the Missouri Department of Conservation has announced is probably the worst year Missouri has ever had for timber rattlers. So snakes were foremost on our mind when we were out in the woods. We took our snake gaiters with us, and but we were still very observant for snakes while we were out. But hopefully when the weather cools down a little bit, the ticks ain't so bad and the snakes are gone into hibernation, I want to get back in there and do some filming and actually get down to the cave. So hopefully, even if the area is locked off, we'll park in an area and just backpack in. But that's going to be after I recover from my surgery. So that's going to be 6 to 8 weeks before we can even think about it. Ed, no, I don't have Verizon. I've got AT&T.
Robbie, do you have Verizon?
Mm-hmm.
Robbie's got Verizon. Do you have any signal down at Smittle?
I think I had a little bit.
Yeah, very. I didn't have hardly any signal.
We went to so many different places. It's hard.
Moon Valley, I had signal, and at Joe Bald, I had signal, but at Combs Ferry and Smittle Cave, I didn't have hardly anything.
Yeah, I had signal at Combs Ferry. I Verizon also. But in a pinch, my SUV's got AT&T, so we could always have set it up.
Isabel asked, "Do people have access to the caves?" No, Smittle Cave is not open to the public. They've put massive steel bars across that thing to keep people out.
Oh, that's right. We have to protect the bats.
Roxanne Delgado says, "DA, I'm glad you said that. A friend of mine doesn't believe we have timber rattlers at all. I'll look that up and show her." Yeah, the Missouri Department of Conservation announced that this is a bad year for timber rattlers. They said that there's just an inordinate amount of snakes out this year overall. Last winter didn't really do much to slow them down. But timber rattlers is something we're supposed to be watching out for. And although we didn't see any, that doesn't mean we didn't walk right past them, because those little things are very hard to see when they're laying still in the leaves. Deloise, there was a comment there. She said, "Where I live in Texas, we don't have a lot of trees except mesquite, so we won't have Dogman or Bigfoot, just have a lot of wild hogs." That's not necessarily true. There are plenty of Bigfoot and Dogman sightings even in the deserts of southern Arizona. So just because there's not a lot of trees, as long as there's food source and water, you're going to find them.
Yep.
And if they use caves like we think they do, they would be able to survive for extended periods of time, even in very arid environments. Yeah, Penny Van, she said in all states, all the dangerous snakes and bugs are out in serious force, really bad. Well, at the meet and greet they did down in LBL that Robbie went to, Tim Coonbo Baker, he got a tick-borne illness, and he was sick for a while. And that was very heavy on our minds.
Mm-hmm.
You're making sure we kept ticks off of us. Out of all the places we went and all of that, I only found one tick, and it was crawling on the back of my neck, right behind my ear. And he got extricated, and he hadn't bit me, but we were slathering on the off and other crap, wanting to make sure we kept those things at bay. What else were we going to talk about? Oh, we can talk about Moon Valley. For those of you who don't know what a shofar sounds like, I've got a video I'll play for you. And this is my oldest son, Nathan, and he's still learning to play the shofar. But the videos we recorded down at Moon Valley are in the wrong format for me to show on the show. So I'm going to have to get those switched over. But this is my oldest son, Nathan, playing the shofar in my backyard.
You can hear our old air conditioner.
Yeah, the old air conditioner's out there humming in the background. And when we played that down at Moon Valley, you could hear it echoing up and down the valley for a long way. And when we played it down in Moon Valley, when we played that, Noah was picking up responses on the
Parabolic
parabolic mic, but they never got close. We could hear them in both directions down the valley, but they never got any closer. We were hoping to draw them in. Oh, you found some partial tracks down at Moon Valley too, didn't you?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, there were partial tracks, but I'm not. As many people was down there, it could have been
true
human.
And that's something we thought about with Moon Valley, that there were so many people in and around Moon Valley that maybe that kept them away. But something else we noticed about Moon Valley was all of the caves. On both sides of the valley are tons of caves, some of them going back quite far. However, that is all private property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Noah one of these days here, probably after I recover, because, again, I've just got a couple of days left until I go in the hospital. But once I recover, we're going to go down to Dallas County, because that's where Moon Valley is set, and it's in Dallas County. And I'm going to go to the Recorder of Deeds and see if I can find out who owns that property. And if I can get permission to go back there and film, then that's another expedition. However, we had okay signal in Moon Valley, but I still want to be able to implement the plan we've got in place to boost the signal so we can go mobile and go live anywhere we want. But that's something that we're working on, something we're still trying to figure out how to finance getting the equipment, because it's not going to be a small outlay. It's going to be a pretty significant amount of money to get the equipment we want. And that was something we wanted to be able to bring to you guys here on the channel. We wanted to start going to some of these remote places and going live. There are other channels that are going out in places like LBL and stuff and recording and posting the video, but there's not really hardly anybody doing it live. And that's something we want to do. And you could be our eyes and ears as we're walking, because God knows what you might see walk out on that video.
Yeah, like we've kind of talked about that this week while we've been out there. Is that if that's something that I don't know how if you could put up a poll or something about how
a poll for what? I kind of blanked there. I gotta be real.
What we were talking about, if people would like to see us start going and doing lives.
Yeah.
Gary Lowe says that just echoed up and down the creek behind his house due to my Bluetooth speaker, and everything went silent. And the funny thing about that shofar is something Robbie and I noticed when we were down in Moon Valley. When Nathan played that, both of us just immediately got goosebumps. I mean, it's a very powerful sound. And watching it on that video doesn't really do it justice, because you can feel the acoustics of that thing. And that's not the only type of shofar. There are others that have different tonal qualities, higher and lower. I want to get a deeper one, but again, that's something that I'm going to have to do once finances are a little better.
Yeah, need to take the Aztec death whistle down to play it too.
We had it. We didn't ever try it.
I know. We had it.
Yeah, we had the Aztec whistle with us, and we completely spaced out.
Tell you, we could have freaked the hell out of those campers if we'd used it at Smittle Cave. Just set up somewhere in the middle of them and then just play that thing.
Yeah, go down by that creek and blast out with the Mayan death whistle. That'd have been some folks packing up and leaving.
I wonder what it would have done at.
An excellent way to clear out a campsite, you say?
Yeah, do it at night from the woods. That'd scare the crap out of somebody. Noah Penderell says, if money was not an issue and you had all the equipment you needed, what's the number one location you would want to do a thorough live investigation at?
LBL.
The number one place I want to go, because I've been to LBL. I spent a week in LBL. My number one place that I would like to go would be the Port Chatham in Alaska. What about you?
That's up there for me too, for sure.
Yeah. There, Snell Grove Lake.
Mm-hmm. One of those.
That would be mine too.
However, the plan we've got in place for boosting our signal would not work at Snell Grove. We would need satellite uplink at that Snell Grove. Probably at Port Lock too, Port Chatham. Gilbert Miller had a good question here. He said, "Does there seem to be a difference in activity during daylight and at night?" We definitely get more activity at night, but what I'm noticing here, is we also get more activity in the spring and fall. In the hot months of the summer, we're not getting as many sighting reports, and we're not getting as much going on in our areas. Even the stuff we encountered at Combs Ferry never really got close to us. And when we were in Joe Bald, it just felt like any other park. It didn't feel dangerous at all. Not at all like when we were there in November. There was something actively hunting us in November. There's another question. Roxanne said, DA, they thought you would have been captured for sacrifice. Yeah, maybe. Mark Napier says, once you get well practiced with the shofar, you can hit highs and lows with the same horn. Okay. Well, that'll be for Nathan. I'm not much of a musician.
Nathan was hitting some pretty high notes with it. So
yes, he was. Michelle Powell says, some of us think y'all should make an Amazon wish list for your supplies and equipment for needed your expeditions. Yeah, that I could probably do that.
Well, that kind of segue into what we were talking about.
So there is something that I know about because I've used it for Twitch before, and also I know a lot of streamers who have used it. But we wouldn't necessarily have to set up an Amazon wish list. There's a service called Throne that we would be able to do that through, and that's exclusively what that's for.
Well, what we and Robbie and I had been talking about, and this is something we wanted to talk to you guys about, because I don't like doing like GoFundMe or crowdfunding things. I don't like asking people to pay for stuff, not without being able to really give them something something back. That's why I don't do crowdfunding hardly ever. It's in fact it's the last one we did was years ago, and I felt bad that we even did it. So we thought about doing a crowdfunding and set up different tiers, like whatever certain dollar amounts you might get something from Lone Wolf Customs, certain dollar amounts you might get an autographed book or two, and at some dollar amounts you might get a Dark Angel medical kit. But for the upper tier, the maximum tiers, we were talking about giving away positions for people to go with us to these places when we go live. Antonio said, Antonio Vasquez says, what about the Alaska Triangle? Port Chatham's in the Triangle, but yeah, the Alaskan Triangle would be someplace I would love to go explore. I would certainly be grabbing Fred as a guide. Mm-hmm. Roxanne says, DA, wonder what Bigfoot would do with hard rock playing like Black Sabbath. I don't know, but according to Coonbo, they don't like Led Zeppelin. Apparently, he was playing Led Zeppelin, and they got rocks thrown at him.
Lisa Smith says you're going to need a net for catching those Missouri tree trout. No, you just pick them like berries.
Yeah. Trout berries.
I'm picturing with the shofar.
Missouri trout berries.
Yeah.
These trout berries taste like trout berries.
Yeah. I'm picturing somebody playing Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, and you got that horn call at the beginning of it, everybody starts reacting.
Kodiak asked, do any of these places like Combs Ferry have bears?
There are a lot of bears in southwest Missouri. They're seen fairly regularly. Heck, there was just one seen on a Ring doorbell camera in town just a few months ago. So I would never rule out the possibility of bears. But what Noah saw crouched down and what Steve saw, Steve, you saw something. You thought you saw a shape move between two trees. Neither of those could have been bears.
Yeah, I did it, and when I went to go get a light on it, I couldn't pick it up. So, it was either hiding in the brush or I was letting my nerves get to me. Which is either one's a possibility. But for as close as this thing got, especially at the end when the three of you were the last one to exfil out, it was clearly good at hiding itself.
Oh yeah,
in the foliage. Because, it was
we were in
20, 25, 30.
Not the other way around.
Yeah, 25, 30 yards away. And it was seeing us and you weren't seeing it.
Gilbert Miller said, for what it's worth, my encounter was daylight and during summer. I'm not saying you won't encounter them, but it just seems to be in our area that they're more active in the spring and fall. Gilbert, where was your encounter at, if you don't mind me asking?
Northwood says, sorry, but I won't be able to provide a modified HEMT for a mobile command post.
Man, that would be too bad, man. If I had unlimited cash, I would probably get an old surplus HEMT or an Oshkosh and have it outfitted with all the gear we needed, because those things will go anywhere.
Well,
we were joking around when you were having trouble walking before about getting you a motorized wheelchair with tank treads on it.
Yeah. If I ever wind up in a wheelchair, that's still going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you wanted a really heavy-duty command center, yeah, you could do the HEMT, but you could also do the Oshkosh M1070. That's, like, the biggest semi that the military uses.
No, I think this one's for you.
Snowsberry's just like tree bass.
Gary said it was near Huntsville, Arkansas. There's daytime sightings down near Falk. Huntsville, I believe, if I remember correctly, is that in southern Arkansas? But, when we get some of these areas that are heavily wooded and with a lot of running water, I think these things, I don't think they migrate like birds do. I don't think that they do that. I think much like a cougar, a mountain lion, I think they have a big range. Because these are big predators, if they were to stay in one area, they would eat everything there is to eat in a very short amount of time. And a cougar, we know a cougar travels, its range is almost about in the ballpark of 200 miles. So cougars have a big range. So if these things travel in family groups, that range has got to be much bigger, because they would eat everything in the area. All the game, everything would be gone. Penny Van said, my Bigfoot experience was close up and personal in a forest in 106 degrees Fahrenheit, humid Shenandoah Valley in July at noon. Yeah, I'm definitely not saying that, you won't see one during the day. But in the heat of the day, it seems like they're less active. I'm not saying that they're inactive. I'm not saying you won't see one, but it seems like the majority of sightings are at dusk or just at dawn or at night when the air temperature is down, especially in the heat we're having. They're going to be laying low or an area where there's plenty of water or where it's very shady or even in a cave. Because if you're walking around in basically a fur coat all the time, the heat is going to be oppressive. So I would imagine these things have got to find some way to cool off. Arkansas Hog Hunter says that's not too far from me here, just a bit south. Robert D said, my run-in up here in New England, in northeast parts of Missouri, has been year-round, but a lot of them has been in the summertime, mostly at night. Most at night, though. Yeah, I think it depends on what part of the area you're in. If these things have a range, like I think, then they're going to be in different areas at different times of the year. But what I'm just saying is, around here in Southwest Missouri, that time of the year seems to be mostly in spring and fall. It's not 100%. I mean, there are still sightings in the summer and even in the winter, but the bulk of the sightings seem to be in like the season when deer are giving birth and then the mating season. Gary Lee says, do you guys think there'll be more sightings with all the flooding down south? Yeah, the flooding will displace everything. I would definitely say you'll see sightings increasing in those flooded areas. ED says, since I've taken over the property, I've been getting them year round. Yeah, you're down on the Niangua. The Niangua seems to be a highway for these things. There's a lot of sightings along the Niangua between, say, Buffalo and Lake of the Ozarks. that whole corridor along the Niagara between about Buffalo, Missouri, and Lake of the Ozarks seems to have a hell of a lot of sightings. So I was trying to catch some of the questions or checking comments. 2 hour mark. Yes, Miss Lene. We're getting to the point where Robbie's going to have to go to bed before too long because he's got a long drive ahead of him tomorrow. And I still want to be able to hang out and visit with him a little bit before he goes back to the hotel and get some sleep. So we're probably going to go and start winding things down. But if you guys would be interested in helping with a GoFundMe type program, where we would definitely have tiers where you could get involved and go on some of these. We'd have to keep it small because we don't want to go in with a large group of people. What we took into Combs Ferry was 7 people, and most of them were people with good, reliable experience, people that had the skills we needed. So we would definitely have to keep the groups small. So only 1 or 2 people would be able to go with us at a time. But if that is something y'all would be interested in, we would sure appreciate it because one, it helps us get the equipment we want. And I really think if we can start doing lives from some of these, that we will see some pretty explosive growth on the channel. And we would really, really like to see the channel take off because frankly, I'd like for this goofy bastard to retire and move down here to the Ozarks so we could do this shit all the time.
Yeah.
We'd
be dragging Steve into the woods every damn weekend.
Hey, I'm all for the woods, honestly. Like I said, I just gotta, I gotta make sure I'm smart enough to brace myself accordingly. And now that I know what to expect, it'll be a little less jarring.
And we'll have our fully autonomous medic Steve going around, and then we'll have my backpack medic Doc,
and hopefully we'll have Doc. Yeah, hopefully we'll have Doc down here.
Yeah.
Antonio Vasquez, have you seen the Dogman sighting in Fort Pierce, Florida? I had not. I'll have to check that one out. I'll see if I can Google that one up here in a little bit. But yeah, we are after the 2 hour mark, and the time of the show when I like to remind everybody about the 22 a day project. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and folks, that is 22 too many. If you look at the Till Valhalla project, if you look at the ODMP, the Officer Down Memorial page, you see the toll that this takes on men and women in uniform. And these people have given their all to keep us safe and to keep us free. And we owe it to these men and women to not only honor their memory, but to do everything we can to let them know they are not fighting these demons alone. Remember the 22nd to every month. That would be a great day to mark your calendar to just reach out to your veteran friends, your first responder friends. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care, because you never know when that 2 a.m. text, "Hey, fuck, are you awake?" might be what keeps them off the edge that day. We all go through crap. You don't have to fight them demons alone, and don't let the hard days win, because we have all been there. And I've had some hard days here lately that Robbie and Steve both have been very helpful the last couple of days, because I got this surgery coming up, and frankly, it scares the shit out of me. I'm not too proud to admit it. I've never gone under the knife before, and I'm scared shitless of it. I'm not looking forward to it. The doctor seems to think it's going to be a-okay, that this is fairly routine stuff, but there is a chance that they might perforate my heart, have to crack me open. So I'm not excited about that. And they're going to hit
we
me
were
with,
saying DA. They say if it's a tenth of a percent chance of a problem, if you're the 10th of a percent, it's 100% for you. It makes you worried. We got you.
But thing about it is I'll never know. They're going to hit me with what they call propofol, which we jokingly refer to as the milk of amnesia. It just hits the reset button on your brain for about a day. I will forget crap that happened leading up to the surgery. I'll wake up in a new world and wonder where the hell I'm at, or I won't wake up at all. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And I hope you guys will keep me in your prayers, because Tuesday morning, come hell or high water, I'm going in. And hopefully once it's an internal defibrillator, and then I have what's called a left side bundle branch blockage on top of that, and it's supposed to stabilize the electric pulses in my heart, and it'll eliminate a lot of my shortness of breath issues. And once I recover, I'm hoping that is going to put me back out to hiking way back in the woods and going back to doing the crap I did before. I just, once in a while I'll be like, when it shocks me, when it detects in a regular rhythm. And I'm going to mess with my wife. I'm going to be like, honey, 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 honey. I'm going to be doing that crap constantly. So, and I definitely plan on doing that when the doctor comes to check on me. I'm like, is this normal? I'm definitely going to be messing with the doctor about that. So,
Lord,
folks, keep me in your prayers, and hopefully this will be the routine surgery they seem to think it'll be, and I'll only be in the hospital a day or two, but it's probably going to take me several days to recover. So there won't be a show on Wednesday because I'll be in the hospital. So no show on Wednesday, and we're going to play it by ear on Saturday to see how I feel, because they don't want me moving my left arm at all for a couple of days. And even after that, I can't lift it any higher than this for about 6 weeks. So touch and go. We'll see how I feel. I don't really need to raise my arms much to type. So,
and Noah's going to update me, and I'm going to update all the groups, right?
Yeah. Noah's going to keep Robbie and Steve updated, and Robbie's going to keep all the Facebook groups updated.
I may even post about it on the YouTube now that I know how that works.
Okay.
I may even be like, hey, everybody's surgery went well,
But if everything goes as planned, when I've recovered from this, I'm definitely going to be in a much better place physically, and I'll be able to get my butt back out in the deep woods. And that's when we really want to be able to implement this idea for us to be able to go live. And we're not going to do every show live from the woods. We'll probably just do Wednesdays like normal, and maybe do a Saturday live from somewhere. But it won't be every day of the week. But once we get the equipment in place and get this figured out, don't be surprised if we don't start going live from places like Werewolf Springs or LBL or Smittle Cave, or even some places you may not even heard of. So again, keep us in your prayers, and don't forget, if you know of anyone that's a first responder or a veteran in any capacity, reach out to them. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you care. Let them know they're not facing these demons alone, because God knows we've all faced them. So now that we're winding up, me and Robbie can actually clink glasses this time. But there's an old quote from an old Irish drinking song called "The Parting Glass." It's a beautiful tune, but when you listen to the song, it's talking about raising a glass to those we've lost along the way, those who cannot lift a glass with us. It's about saying goodbye. And the quote says, "But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night, and joy be to you all." Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.